So I'll run you through. Now you can see you've got the dam wall. You can see the outlet tower, which is the bit in the middle. That's like a big tube that goes down, and there's 4 places they can take water out. There's a big tunnel underneath the dam wall. It's pretty big, you can drive a golf cart through it. There's 2 massive pipes. You can actually go up in the outlet tower. It's the scariest lift ride you'll ever have in your life. Tiny lift that never gets used and doesn't work very well, but no one knows that you're there. It then comes down the bottom and runs down, and you can see down the bottom there, that's the filtration plant. That's operated by United Water, and that water gets treated there, and pretty much if you draw a line from here to the sea and go north, all that area through there is all supplied by this reservoir. So that's where all your water goes. You can get an idea of where we're standing now is about the original road level across the dam wall. We had to dig that down for 2 reasons. One, to be able to build the stiffening in behind the wall, and the other is at its higher height it only had a 22 tonne load limit, so obviously we couldn't take 45, 55 tonne trucks across it. So by digging it down, you widen it, reduce your zone of influence, and we can take more load. So you can get an idea. This extension on the wall, that was all constructed from the level it is at now. So that was all done with cranes and scaffolds. Just purely from a timing point of view, that was better. We had some issues with the design. Now, I mentioned before how we were the early contractor involvement, which is supposed to help some issues. The very nature of the shape of that stiffening means that it's almost impossible to vibrate correctly and get all the air bubbles out, because you've got a big slope and a very tiny gap at the top. Imagine you have to have formwork all the way up, apart from the little gap at the top. So that's all you've got to put the concrete in, and that's the only space you've got to vibrate through. We tried to tell them, they wouldn't listen, as is sometimes the way. So you can see about a quarter of the way along, there's a section with a whole heap of darker colour. That was the first one we did. And when we took the formwork off, there's holes everywhere. It just looks like what they call honeycombing, where the concrete hasn't matched in properly.
All like this.
Yeah, that was basically because of the vibration. We couldn't get vibration equipment in there. Then had to modify our formwork design and how we poured the concrete and the mix design to the concrete. And that then came up with between those, we came up with a solution that meant we didn't have that happen again. But all that could have been avoided if the designer paid attention in the first place and stood up that wall and made it a bit squarer. Would have used more concrete, but the cost would have actually been a saving in the long run, because it's harder to make the formwork that shape. Also had a question about OC health and safety. Bud Avcol are accredited for international OC health and safety, quality and environmental standards. All those things mean that we have a site safety supervisor, we have a safety rep, we have a company site, I guess he's the engineering systems manager that takes care of all that. We have weekly audits that we have to do for safety environment to make sure that our silt fences are all intact, that no one's driving where they're not supposed to, that everyone's being safe. For every operation we do, we have to write a job hazard analysis, which goes through what are all the possible risks, what's the outcomes if something happens, and how we can mitigate them. So there's a whole magnitude of paperwork. If you ask Ben, that's basically all he ever seems that he does, and that's generally the young site engineers, part of their requirement and responsibilities is to take care of all that stuff. All that, back in the day, quality probably is still fairly high, but safety and environment weren't really considered. These days it's a really big thing, particularly for government clients, even to the point where this will be the first government job in South Australia to be carbon neutral, that we have to keep track of all our reinforcement usage, our concrete usage and all our diesel burn, and they off SA Water have planted a whole heap of trees out through the property to try and offset that carbon usage.